you looking to sharpen your budgeting skills? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast, where we talk about life, family, and how to afford it. And now, the Budget Couple themselves, Nate and Danielle.
Welcome to the Budget Couple Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I'm Danielle.
And on this episode, we're going to talk about goals. More importantly, we're going to talk about goal setting as a couple, what it looks like, what it feels like, and we'll use examples from our life to kind of sprinkle in how we've done this and how it works for us. But before we get there, if you could please leave a review for this show on Apple Podcasts or any podcast player that you listen to this show on. It helps us grow the show and reach more people. We greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Over the past few episodes, we've talked quite a bit about what some of our plans and goals are around money and finances. We've hinted at, how we want to save, why we budget, but we really wanted to dig down in this episode and talk about our short, mid to medium and long-term goals and how they've changed as a couple and throughout our years and just what our goals are at this point in time.
Right. We both feel it's really important for couples to have goals in common. That can be life goals of things you want to do. It can be budgetary goals of things you want to spend money on, but it really helps provide you a direction on where to put your money and kind of helps recenter things if you get off track. And the goals are kind of floating. They don't have to be set in stone solid things. Our goals have greatly changed over the past few years, but we've always agreed upon our goals and it's always given us direction on where we want to go with things.
So let's go back to the beginning. When we first got married, we talked a little bit about how we lived. We lived in Texas. I was in grad school. We were making very, very little money. That was only about a year. And then we moved on to Delaware, actually, where we stayed for another 3 years. And again, we weren't making a ton of money at that point. So I think that kind of set us on a path where we didn't have a lot of long-term goals at that point. And we didn't really have any midterm goals either. We tended to think more short term. We knew we didn't have a lot of money. I was kind of wanting to squirrel away some money in our just savings account because I knew we'd eventually want to be putting a down payment down for a house or maybe needing to buy a new car, something like that. So instead of putting towards long-term retirement goals, I was wanting to more save, just put money in our savings so that we could save for future houses and such.
Right. And before we continue, let's define what short, midterm, and long-term goals are. A short-term goal is anything from like zero, like something you could do tomorrow, all the way up through 2 years. They're relatively short-term goals, so it's really easy and relatively quick to pay off. A midterm goal we're defining as anything that you can set a goal for at a future point of 2 to 10 years. So it comes after a short-term, the midterm comes. And then a long-term goal is anything that we set as being 10 plus years out in the future. And we'll define those a whole bunch more here in just a little bit. But as we're talking about our experience, I just wanted to make sure we defined what those terms mean for us. Again, short term, quick, like 1 month to 2 years, midterm from 2 years to 10 years, and then finally long term is 10 plus years.
And you can adjust that for kind of what works for you if you want to adjust those time frames a bit. But that, that's a general sense for if you're wanting to think time frames with financial goals.
Exactly. And again, when we were starting off, we didn't have midterm goals. We didn't really have long-term goals at all. We were really just kind of spending money and doing stuff. And that's because we didn't have anything to tie us down. We could save up money relatively quickly and do something relatively quickly. There was nothing really there to stop us. Danielle was in grad school, so her schedule was wide open except for the school year, and I was a teacher, so my school year was wide open except for the beginning of the school year and end of the school year. The summers were wide open for us, and we took massive advantage of that time that we had.
We didn't have any kids. Again, I was in grad school, so I had a really flexible schedule. So we wanted to travel, we wanted to see the world. And while we didn't have a lot of money, we also didn't have a lot of expenses at that time. So we did take the chance to travel quite a bit. We ended up going on sometimes multiple vacations each year. But it was a good thing for us, I think, because it was one of our goals and it was one of our short-term goals during that time frame. And I think we achieved it. In that case,
we both agreed that we wanted to travel. We could afford to travel, so travel we did. And that was a good thing for us. In hindsight, we probably should have put a little bit of money, maybe like $100 a month onto a Roth IRA for each of us or just for one of us, just so that we would have increased our retirement down the road. Now, granted, the stock market didn't do too great during that time, so we might have come out ahead, but in long-term planning, we're definitely behind of where we could be if we would have invested money from the beginning.
Now, there are two things we did right, though, during this. Even though we were focused on short-term goals, we did not go into debt. So we made sure we did stick to a budget. And we also made sure that we paid for Nate's school. Actually, he went to get his master's, and we made sure we paid that in cash. So we did not go into debt during this time. We just didn't contribute to retirement the way we should have.
Right. And we also followed our other budgetary rules where we had a crash fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses, and our other budget was set up and ready to go. We made sure that we fit those parameters, and that's why we talk about this on this podcast, is because we've been doing this for the better part of a decade here, almost a decade, and we've kind of gotten good at honing in on stuff and kind of transferring what we do to real world applications so that it works for us.
Moving on to short-term goals. Again, that's the 1 month to 2 year time frame. They're pretty quick and hopefully relatively easy to obtain depending on what they are. For some people, this might be just paying off debt. Maybe it's a smaller debt, like a credit card consumer type debt, or maybe it's saving for a vacation that you have. And we talked in a previous podcast about some tips on saving for trips.
Danielle talked about it because that's not my realm.
So some past examples for us would be paying off our very first car. And we were lucky enough that we didn't have to get a car until 2013, actually, because we had cars from when we were in high school, actually, or college, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
And we got a car as a present for our wedding as well. So we were lucky in that, but we did have to end up buying our first car. And we wanted to pay that off in less than 2 years, or about 2 years. And that's roughly what we did.
And we did. And I mean, it's a Honda Civic, so it's nothing flashy, nothing special. It was something that was in our range. And I think it cost about $18,000. And I think Danielle was even uncomfortable spending that much money.
I wanted a used car.
It was in our realm, but it was right after Hurricane Sandy hit, and used car market was ridiculous. We could get basically a brand new car for the price that we would have paid for a used car with more mileage. So we bought a new car with a full warranty and all of that, and we paid it off in about 2 years. So we hit our short-term goal right on the nose with that one, and it really did feel good to have that payment off our back, because while it was a decent percentage of our income as far as
at that time
it was a decent percentage, it just felt good to get rid of a payment, and it was a very liberating experience buying something expensive and then paying that expensive thing off. It was really cool.
The other short-term goal for us that we accomplished was, as I said, we did go on multiple vacations and trips while we were in that first 4 years of our marriage. We made it to Europe several times and to the Caribbean. So we really enjoyed that time, and those were short-term goals for us that we accomplished.
Yeah, I think we averaged a vacation like every 1.3 years or something in our marriage
so
far. So we go on vacation relatively often, but it's part of what we budget for, and it's a short-term goal that we both share, which is why it's a budgetary item. If we both didn't agree on it, well, I probably wouldn't be married to Danielle because she needs to travel. But
yeah, I'd divorce him.
We have that goal in common, and it helps us be able to allocate our finances to meet those goals. Our current short-term goal is to pay off our solar panels, which we've talked ad nauseum about on these 13 episodes so far.
Thanks to Nate.
I'm sorry. But our original loan for that was $36,000, and we're sitting about 11 months after that, and we have only $3,600 left. So we've paid off 90% of that loan in just 11 months. So we're doing a great job on that. We should knock it out by October or November at the very latest. And then we will be debt-free as far as the solar panels are concerned. They will be 100% ours.
The one thing we will say again is that $36,000 got knocked down by about $11,000 because we got a tax refund on that. So that was a little bit lower. That helped us a lot in taking a good chunk out. Absolutely.
But I still feel that even if we didn't have that tax benefit, we would have had this paid off in the short-term goal of 2 years because of the money we were able to put down on it and extra. We would have had this paid off in that time. But because of that tax benefit, we'll have it paid off in about a year instead of 2 years.
And, I'll just add that especially these types of short and maybe getting into the midterm goals are not, it sounds crazy. It sounds absolutely nuts paying $36,000, or even if you knock that down to $24,000 of debt in 11 months or 14 months or whatever, sounds like a lot each month. And it is. But what we do is we just stick to our budget. It's not like we're eating, freaking canned tuna every day. We are still getting to live, we just stick to a budget, and we know how much is going in and out, and we end up having extra each month. And that extra we just choose to put towards that debt that we want to get rid of. That's allowed us to get rid of things quickly.
Absolutely. So we both share short-term goals, and we've been very successful at accomplishing our short-term goals. Let's talk a little bit about midterm goals now. Midterm goals are, again, 2 years to 10 years out. So they're kind of goals that you can see the light, but it's not there yet. It's not super close. It's not super tangible.
Our current midterm goal, I would say, would be our paying off our house. So that's clearly kind of looming over us. We still have quite a bit to pay off on it. I mean, that's a big chunk.
Yeah, it's about $290,000 or so,
yeah.
Somewhere in that range. It's a lot of money. It's a scary amount of money.
It is.
And that's one of the reasons that it motivated us to be a goal, to get rid of that. Because as soon as we have that gone, that's an asset, number one, but also it's not a liability. It's not something that we have kind of hovering over us, waiting for possible doom to come as far as finances go. It's something that if we pay off, we open up a lot of freedom to ourselves.
We do. So Nate, clearly he's the one really pushing this, and I want it done as well, but I'm just a little more on the realistic.
I'm an optimist. I'm the absolute eternal optimist. So she's going to say realistic, which makes her sound better, but the optimism is what wins the day.
He would like to have it paid off by the time we're 40, which is now less than 10 years away.
Yeah, it's a little under 9 years, or
Yuck.
a little over 9 years, but yeah, it's close, but not that close.
So I mean, it's maybe doable, but we really have to stick to our budget and put that extra money towards the house at all times. But it can fit in that midterm time frame of 2 to 10 years, although I see it kind of edging into the perhaps long-term time frame.
That's fair enough. And part of the reason for that might be is that we also have some other things that we want to do. We have other midterm goals. One of them is home improvement. We do want to redo our master bathroom. It's a small space, so it shouldn't cost a whole lot.
Oh, it will.
It will probably. But compared to like a big bathroom, it's not going to cost what that would. But we want to redo it. It's an 80s house, and it has 80s fixtures and has 80s shower, and we want to redo that. And we also want to redo our kitchen at some point. I have big dreams for that, but
I think it looks fine. I would be fine with it for a while.
Those countertops, you like those countertops?
Maybe we could replace the countertops.
Okay, so at least we have that. But those are also midterm goals. They're not something we're going to be doing in the next year or two, but there might be something within the next 10 years that we plan on taking care of. We also have a car, and the Leaf, the electric car that we've talked about ad nauseum as well, thanks to me. That is, I don't really consider it a goal because it's something that's part of our monthly budget already. It is something that we do want to pay off, but we have a 0% interest loan on it. So it is the absolute lowest bottom of the barrel priority. We just pay our monthly payment on it. It goes out automatically, and the car will eventually be ours in another 5 years or so. So yeah, it's about $300 a month on us, but it's not killing us. It's honestly not something I even really think about all that much. The only change that would be is that if we needed to get another car, let's say the Civic dies, which it's only 4 years old, it
Please
should
don't.
not. But let's say something happens to it where we do need to replace it. We'd want to get rid of one of those car payments as fast as possible. Even if they're both 0% interest, it's just a lot of money going out each month towards items that are degrading in value and going to wind up costing us a lot more money. So we want to pay those off pretty quick.
Long-term goals, this is into the 10 plus year time frame. So this is really long term, but it's still important to think about, even if it's kind of far away. Generally, these sort of goals are centered around retirement or certain types of savings. So for us, it's early retirement. We really want to be able to squirrel away enough money that we have a solid retirement account, or we have solid retirement accounts, should I say, early
Plural.
on. Yes, of course. Early on, we want to travel a lot.
I want to travel too. Danielle has a much bigger burning passion for that, but I absolutely adore the travel that we've done. It's been a blast.
We want to do the early retirement and the flexibility to travel, and the financial ability to travel when we're still fairly young and our boy is just getting into college and out of the house. So that's the other thing. We also want to make sure his college is paid for. And we're putting away $250 a month into our state college savings plan. So that's a long-term goal, even though we're, paying for it right now.
Yeah. And I mean, what may be coming up down the road is, let's imagine us 10 years down the road, or even let's say 20 years down the road when he's maybe getting married. Maybe a short-term or long-term goal for that or midterm goal, would be helping fund his wedding or something like that. But that's not something we're putting money away for right now because
he might not want to get married.
That might be a little presumptuous of us. And it's not something that we really want to take care of yet. But we definitely do want to help or entirely pay for his wedding if need be. But we want to make sure that we're putting money in the places that we need to right now. That is not a long-term goal of us because we can't predict the future that far out. Whereas in 10 years, we know that we're going to want to do early retirement. We still know we're going to want to travel. So we'll put money towards those things or the things that allow us to do those so that we can do that in the future. But as far as our son's wedding, we have no idea of knowing if that's going to happen in the long term. So we're not going to put money towards it because we can't guarantee that that's going to be something that's necessary.
So those are our short, mid, and long-term goals and just a general sense of what that means to plan for those time frames. Now, I wouldn't say we necessarily sat down and wrote these out at any point. It's something we talk about. It's something we've just kind of naturally agreed on, things that are important to us, and it fits into our budget. That's what we have to make sure that all of these goals, no matter the short, mid, long-term timeframes, just fit into our budget and our lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that's one of the important things to take out of this is that while we might not sit there and write them down and kind of discuss them heavily, we do talk about our finances on a regular basis, at least at a minimum once a month, but usually much more frequently than that. And that also helps influence where our goals shoot because we can figure out, okay, we have this much money. What do we want to do with it? And it really helps us kind of narrow down and focus on what we should be spending money on. So we don't talk about it entirely, but we do focus on it. But that's all we really have for this episode. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, or just like to talk to us, please go to budgetcouple.com. And for this episode in particular, you can go to budgetcouple.com/episode 13.
Please feel free to submit any questions you may have. If you have a burning financial or budget-related question, even if you're not necessarily a couple, please feel free to send those to us and let us know. And we look forward to talking to you next time.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Budget Couple Podcast with your hosts, Nate and Danielle. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit budgetcouple.com. Make sure to check out the next episode of the Budget Couple Podcast, where we'll talk more about life, family, and how to afford it. We'll catch you next time.